Hey everyone, welcome back to Applied Wisdom Literature for Living Better. We're all about finding those little ideas that can really kind of shift your perspective. And today we're diving deep into a book that's become a bit of a mental model. I don't know, a game changer for a lot of people. The Great Mental Models, Volume 1 by Parrish and Rhiannon Beaubien.
Yes.
And, since you're tuning in, you're probably already thinking about these things, like how to grow and make better choices. And this book offers some really, really powerful tools to do just that.
It really does.
So maybe just to kick things off.
Yeah.
What's the core problem they're tackling here? What are we trying to fix by looking at these mental models?
Well, they point out that it's really easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles, right? So an engineer is going to look at the world through an engineering lens and a scientist through a scientific lens and so on. And so that expertise is really valuable, but the problem is that reality is messy and it doesn't respect those boundaries.
Right.
And so what this book encourages us to do is to break out of those silos.
So it's kind of like building a more well-rounded way of thinking.
Exactly. Yeah, the book talks about building a latticework of mental models. Okay. So imagine kind of a framework in your mind that's made up of these kind of big foundational ideas from different fields: physics, biology, psychology, history, all these different things.
Okay.
And the more models you have and the better you understand how they connect, the more angles you can see a problem from and the better your decisions are going to be.
So would you say that this Volume 1 focuses on kind of the really fundamental, really like broadly applicable stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Volume 1 is focused on what they call general thinking concepts. So these aren't specific to investing or relationships or, your career or anything like that. These are the underlying principles that influence how you think about everything.
Got it.
It's about strengthening the very foundation of your thought process.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's jump into some of these models then, because I'm really excited to hear what they are. The first one that they talk about is the map is not the territory.
Yes.
Which sounds simple, but I get the feeling it's pretty profound.
It's so foundational, and it's this constant reminder that our understanding of reality, our mental maps, our theories, even the information we get from the news or from books, these are all just representations, right? They're not the real thing. And they can be incredibly useful for navigating life, but they're inherently simplified and they can even be inaccurate. So the crucial insight here, I think, is humility. Yeah. It's recognizing that, hey, my map of the situation might be incomplete or it might even be wrong.
Okay.
And so it kind of compels us to be lifelong learners, constantly updating our understanding in the face of new evidence.
So how does that change how I approach a disagreement or trying to understand something new?
Yeah, it encourages you to kind of take a step back and say, what am I not seeing here? What are the limitations of my current understanding? And be open to the possibility that your map of the situation might be incomplete or even wrong. Yeah. And so instead of, clinging tightly to your viewpoint and getting into these sort of arguments with people, you're willing to explore other perspectives and to kind of refine your map based on new information.
That's a really great point. I like that a lot. So the next model is circle of competence.
Yes.
And that always makes me think of Warren Buffett and like knowing what you're good at.
Absolutely.
So can you tell me a little bit about this one?
So it's about really understanding the boundaries of your own expertise.
Okay.
It's about focusing your time and energy on making decisions and taking action in areas where you have a solid understanding. Right? And when you venture outside that circle, that's when you need to be extra cautious or you need to seek advice. Or maybe you just say, you know what, this isn't for me.
So if like my friend is trying to get me into some really complex investment strategy, and I'm like, I don't even understand half the words they're saying, this is kind of like a signal from this model to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Totally.
Like back up. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And so a key actionable insight from this is to really define what your core competencies are.
Great.
Right? What do you truly understand inside and out? And then when opportunities come up or decisions come up that fall outside that circle, that's a signal to either learn more deeply before you act, or to seek counsel from somebody who is competent in that area, or just to say, you know what, I'm going to pass on this one. There's real strength in knowing what you don't know.
That makes a lot of sense in terms of like avoiding costly mistakes. But how do we know when it's like the right time to kind of cautiously expand that circle and learn something new? Because that also seems valuable.
It's a great question. Yeah, expanding your circle of competence is definitely valuable.
Okay.
But it should be a deliberate and gradual process, right? So start by focusing on what are sometimes called adjacent areas. So things that are kind of related to what you already understand, right? Invest the time in learning and building a foundational understanding before you jump into something completely foreign. So think of it as slowly drawing a bigger circle rather than leaping to a new one overnight.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next model is first principles thinking.
Yes.
And I feel like this one could really help you cut through the noise.
Definitely.
So tell me, what is it all about?
So instead of relying on analogies, right, saying we should do this because it worked that way before, with first principles thinking, you break a problem down to its most fundamental, undeniable truths. So think of it like peeling back the layers of an onion until you get to the core elements. So a famous example of this is Elon Musk and how he approached the cost of rockets. He didn't just accept the existing prices. He went back to the basic materials and figured out a much cheaper way to do it. And so it's about really going back to, the absolute basics.
So how can we bring that kind of first principles approach
Yeah.
to our daily lives, even for like smaller decisions?
Yeah. So when you're facing a challenge, try to identify the core assumptions that you're making. Right. Question those assumptions rigorously. What are the most basic truths about this situation? So, for example, if you're trying to get in shape, the first principles might be things like your body needs calories for energy, and burning more calories than you consume leads to weight loss.
Okay.
And so building your strategy up from these fundamental truths can lead to more effective and more creative solutions than just, following the latest fad diet.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like really understanding the underlying mechanics of something rather than just copying what seems to be working on the surface.
Exactly.
Okay, the next model is thought experiment.
Yes.
And it sounds like a great way to kind of explore ideas without real-world risks.
Totally. It's like a mental sandbox. So a thought experiment is essentially using your imagination to explore the potential outcomes of an idea or principle. So you create this hypothetical scenario in your mind and you play it out. You see what might happen. Einstein famously used thought experiments extensively to develop his theories.
Wow.
And it allows you to test the boundaries of concepts, explore different possibilities, understand potential consequences without needing to conduct an actual experiment, which can be, time-consuming, expensive, or even dangerous.
So before I launch a new project, I could mentally walk through like the best case scenario and the worst case scenario.
Exactly. Before you take a significant action, mentally simulate, the different paths you could take and the potential outcomes of each. Ask yourself, okay, what could go right? What could go wrong? What are the potential unintended consequences? And this mental rehearsal can help you to anticipate problems, refine your plans, and make more informed decisions.
Okay, I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So building on this idea of consequences, this second order thinking.
Yeah.
How is that different from just like thinking ahead?
So most people tend to think in what are called first order consequences.
Yeah.
So if I do X, Y will happen, right?
Okay.
But second order thinking goes a step further.
Right.
It asks, okay, and then what? What are the consequences of okay, right? What are the ripple effects down the line?
Okay.
And considering these kind of longer term and indirect consequences can reveal hidden risks or unexpected opportunities that you might otherwise miss.
Okay.
So it's not just about the immediate impact, but the domino effect.
Do you have like a quick example of that?
Yeah, sure. So imagine a city that's trying to reduce traffic congestion and they decide to widen a major road.
Okay.
So the first order consequence might be that, traffic flow improves a little bit in the short term.
Okay.
But a second order consequence might be that the wider road actually encourages more people to drive, which eventually leads to even worse congestion.
Right.
And so by thinking beyond that immediate effect, you can often anticipate those kinds of unintended outcomes.
So sometimes like a short-term fix can actually create a bigger long-term problem.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. The next one, probabilistic thinking.
Yes.
This one feels really important for navigating the uncertainties of life.
It really is, yeah.
What's the core of this?
So this model encourages us to recognize that the world operates on probabilities, not guarantees.
Okay.
Instead of thinking in black and white or absolutes, you focus on understanding the likelihood of different outcomes. And this also involves what's called Bayesian updating.
Okay.
Which is essentially the idea that as you get new information, you update your beliefs. So, if you initially think there's a 70% chance of rain, but then you see some dark clouds rolling in, you update that probability to maybe 80% or 90%, right?
Okay.
And so it's this idea of constantly adjusting your expectations based on new information.
So being comfortable with maybe.
Yeah.
Rather than always looking for a yes or no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you're evaluating options, try to assess the likelihood of different results based on the information that you have. Avoid making decisions based on wishful thinking or the assumption that there's a single certain future. Be open to new evidence and be willing to revise your probabilities as you learn more.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Inversion, this sounds like a really interesting way to kind of tackle problems.
Yeah.
Like thinking in reverse.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really powerful technique. And so instead of asking, how can I achieve success, you flip the question and you ask, what could cause me to fail?
Yeah.
And by identifying those potential pitfalls, those obstacles, you can then work to avoid them.
Right. And there's a great quote by Charlie Munger that captures this idea. He says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So if I have a goal, instead of just focusing on the steps to get there, I should also think about all the things that could potentially derail me. Absolutely. Yeah. When you're setting a goal, take some time to brainstorm all the possible reasons why you might not achieve it, right? What are the potential roadblocks, mistakes you could make, external factors that could work against you, and then develop strategies to mitigate those risks.
Okay.
Right? And so it's kind of a different perspective that can often reveal really crucial insights that you might miss if you're only focusing on, the positive path forward.
That's a really helpful way to think about risk management.
Yeah.
Not just in business, but even in your personal life too.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's touch on Occam's razor.
Yes.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Yes. Occam's razor is a principle of simplicity.
Okay.
And essentially it states that when you have multiple explanations for the same phenomenon, the simplest one, the one that makes the fewest assumptions, is usually the best. Don't overcomplicate things unnecessarily.
Okay, so keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And then finally, Hanlon's razor.
Yes.
This sounds like a good one.
Yeah. Hanlon's razor states, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
Okay.
Or incompetence or carelessness or, just plain mistake. And so it's this reminder that, a lot of times negative outcomes are the result of errors or lack of foresight rather than deliberate bad intentions. And I think this can be a really helpful model for reducing, unnecessary conflict and frustration in our lives.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Before you jump to conclusions about somebody's actions, consider if there might be a simpler, a less malicious explanation.
It's like giving people the benefit of the doubt sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, wow. So we just went through, a whole bunch of mental models. And I feel like these models, they might sound straightforward, but they offer really powerful frameworks for upgrading your thinking.
They do, yeah.
By understanding them and applying them, you can approach, life's complexities with more clarity. You can make better decisions and ultimately, hopefully live more effectively.
Absolutely.
So this book, The Great Mental Models, Volume 1, really sounds like a valuable resource for anyone who's kind of serious about personal growth.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's not about memorizing a list. It's really about integrating these ways of thinking into your everyday life.
It's a journey, right?
It is, yeah.
It's a process of continuous learning and refinement.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for breaking down these models for us.
My pleasure.
And for you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some practical insights you can start using today to sharpen your thinking and make wiser choices. Thanks for joining us on Applied Wisdom Literature for Living Better. Stay tuned for the next one, and if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We'll see you next time.